Japan, with its vibrant streets, towering skyscrapers, and centuries-old traditions, is a place where modern life moves at an incredible pace. Every corner feels alive, neon lights reflecting off the sidewalks, the hum of trains rushing past, and the steady rhythm of people moving with purpose. Daniel had always admired this energy. It was one of the reasons he chose to live and work here. For him, the city represented opportunity, growth, and the promise of building something meaningful. But in that same rush, there was also a constant demand, deadlines to meet, meetings to attend, and an endless list of responsibilities. Like many others, Daniel poured his time, heart, and energy into his job, determined to create a stable and fulfilling life for himself. Yet, even for someone as motivated as Daniel, there were days when the weight of it all felt heavier than usual. It was a kind of quiet fatigue that built up over time. One evening, after wrapping up another long day at work, Daniel decided to take a different route home. Curiosity drew him closer. Stepping inside, Daniel was greeted by a gentle smile from behind the counter. The bartender, a young woman with kind eyes, welcomed him with a warmth that instantly eased the tension in his shoulders. She asked what he'd like to drink, but more than that, she asked how his day had been. It was such a simple question, yet one that felt genuine. As she prepared his order, they exchanged a few words. Nothing deep, nothing overly personal, just light conversation about the weather, a local festival coming up, and a book she had been reading. But there was something in the way she listened, nodding thoughtfully and occasionally smiling. That made the moment feel different. By the time Daniel finished his drink, he realized he felt lighter than when he walked in. It wasn't just the comfortable atmosphere or the music in the background. It was the brief but sincere connection with another person. It reminded him that even in a city as big and busy as Tokyo, there were still places where time seemed to slow down, where people could simply be present with each other. That night, as he stepped back into the cool evening air, Daniel didn't rush toward the train station. Instead, he sat there, thinking about how a simple change in routine and a single, kind interaction had shifted the way he felt. It was subtle, but it mattered. And without realizing it yet, his small detour would be the start of something far more meaningful. Daniel found himself thinking about that quiet little bar more than he expected. It wasn't just about the drink he had enjoyed. It was about the feeling he carried home with him that night. The kind of peaceful clarity that came from being in a space where no one was in a hurry, where words weren't rushed, and where listening seemed as important as speaking. So, a few evenings later, he returned. The same warm glow welcomed him through the window, and the same gentle smile greeted him from behind the counter. The bartender remembered his name, which caught him off guard in the best way possible. It was a small gesture, but in a city where millions of people pass by each other every day without ever truly meeting, it meant something. This time, their conversation went a little deeper. They spoke about the little joys that made the city special, the cherry blossoms that would bloom in a few weeks, the quiet parks that only locals knew about, and the comfort of finding a favorite place to return to. She shared that she had started working at the bar, not just for income, but because she loved creating a space where people could unwind and feel at ease. Daniel found himself listening intently, realizing that her perspective was different from his own. She valued connection as much as progress. Days turned into weeks, and stopping by the bar became a part of Daniel's routine. Sometimes he would visit after a long workday. Other times, on weekends, he would drop in for a quiet afternoon drink and a few minutes of conversation. Their friendship grew naturally. There was no rush, no pressure, just a mutual respect and enjoyment of each other's company. One evening, after sharing stories about their favorite travel memories, Daniel decided he wanted to express his gratitude more directly. He invited her to dinner at a small local restaurant he liked, not as anything formal or grand, but simply as a way to say thank you for the kindness she had shown him. That night, the atmosphere was relaxed. They talked about life in Japan, the balance between ambition and rest, and the importance of taking time to care for oneself. Daniel realized that while he had always believed hard work was the key to fulfillment, he had often overlooked the role of relationships, even simple, everyday ones, in shaping a meaningful life. The conversation left him with a quiet sense of clarity. It wasn't about making drastic changes or chasing dramatic moments. It was about recognizing the value of the small, consistent connections that add warmth and meaning to our days. By the time the evening ended, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in a long while. Not excitement in the fleeting sense, but a deeper contentment. He understood now that the city's rush would always be there, but so would moments like this, if only he made space for them. As the months passed, Daniel's life began to subtly shift. The long hours at the office didn't disappear, and the city's fast pace remained the same, but something inside him had changed. He had started to prioritize small moments of rest, a morning walk before work, taking the time to enjoy a meal instead of rushing through it, and of course, his visits to the bar where friendship had taken root. But like any meaningful change, this new balance was soon put to the test. A major project at Daniel's company was announced, one that required intense focus, extra hours, and the ability to solve challenges quickly. It was the kind of assignment that could lead to bigger opportunities in his career, and Daniel felt both excited and a little anxious. In the first few weeks, he found himself slipping back into his old routine, late nights at the office, skipping breaks, and pushing himself to meet every deadline ahead of schedule. The quiet moments he had carved out for himself became less frequent. One evening, after a particularly long day, Daniel walked past the familiar street where the small bar was located. He hesitated. Part of him felt too tired to stop in, but another part remembered how much better he had felt after those conversations. Eventually, he pushed open the door. The bartender greeted him with the same warm smile. She noticed he looked more worn out than usual and asked if he was doing all right. Daniel admitted that work had been overwhelming lately. He didn't complain. Instead, he spoke about the pressure he felt to do well and how easy it was to let that pressure take over everything else. She listened quietly, then said something that stayed with him. Ambition is important, but so is the energy that fuels it. If you use it all without taking time to recharge, even your passion can start to fade. It wasn't advice delivered with urgency or force. It was gentle, almost like a reminder he already knew but had forgotten. That night, Daniel walked home reflecting on her words. He realized that the moments he had been treating as optional, a shared meal, a quiet drink, a short walk, were not distractions from his goals. They were what allowed him to keep going without burning out.
どうもお世話になってます。すいません。今手が離せないんで、ちょっとその辺を解いてもらえますか。
とかでいいですか。
はい。
冷蔵庫とかで
Over the next few weeks, he made an effort to create space for both, the dedication to his work and the care for his own well-being. It didn't mean he worked less hard. It meant he worked with more clarity, knowing when to push forward and when to pause. And perhaps most importantly, he began to see his friendship with the bartender, not as a small, passing connection, but as a reminder of what truly matters. That the quality of our lives isn't measured only by what we achieve, but also by the relationships we nurture along the way. Spring arrived in the city, bringing with it soft breezes and the gentle blush of cherry blossoms lining the streets. For Daniel, it felt like the perfect reflection of his own renewed outlook, a quiet reminder that change, no matter how gradual, could still transform everything. Work was still demanding, but it no longer consumed him in the same way. He had learned to step back when needed, to breathe, to notice the world outside the glass walls of his office. He still pursued his goals with the same determination, but now there was space for joy in between. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel decided to invite the bartender, now a trusted friend, to see the cherry blossoms in a nearby park. They walked along the riverbank, petals drifting through the air, their conversation light and easy. There was no agenda, no rush, just the simple act of sharing a moment in the present. They talked about how quickly seasons seemed to pass, how people often waited for the right time to slow down, and how easy it was to forget that life was already happening around them. Daniel found himself saying something he never would have months ago. I used to think success was about always moving forward, but now I see it's also about knowing when to pause and enjoy where you are. His friend smiled and nodded. That's the balance most people spend their whole lives trying to find. Daniel felt a deep sense of gratitude. This friendship had started from something so small, a casual stop at a bar on an ordinary evening. Yet, it had shifted the way he lived his life. It had shown him that fulfillment wasn't just built from hard work and ambition, but also from connection, understanding, and the courage to value both equally. When they parted ways that day, Daniel walked through the park one last time before heading home. The petals beneath his feet reminded him that moments, like seasons, are fleeting, and that appreciating them while they last is one of the simplest yet most powerful things we can do. In the weeks that followed, he continued to nurture both his work and his personal life, carrying with him the lessons he had learned. And although he knew life would always bring new challenges, he also knew he had the tools and the perspective to face them without losing sight of what truly mattered. Because in the end, Daniel's story wasn't about a dramatic turning point. It was about the quiet changes that happen when we open ourselves to others, when we listen, and when we allow everyday moments to teach us something lasting. And perhaps that's the part of his journey we can all take with us. The understanding that no matter how busy life becomes, there is always room for connection and always a reason to make space for it. This inspiring video explores the balance between ambition and happiness, the value of genuine human connection, and the small moments that can shape our future. If you've ever felt caught in the rush of life, this story will remind you to pause, connect, and live fully.